Good afternoon and welcome to the Pasco Public Facilities District Board meeting. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov under the Public Facilities District Board webpage. This meeting is also being televised live on PSC-TV channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamlined on the city's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and Microsoft Teams. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city clerk. So the next order of business, the first order of business is call the meeting to order. And Debbie, if you'd please take the roll.
Yes. Ms. Bowdish? I'm here. Mr. Dietrich?
Yes.
Ms. Gillespie? Here. Dr. Gillette?
Here.
And Mr. Morissette?
Here.
Okay.
Next item, recognition of visitors, public comments. Debbie, were there any public comments that came through the?
There were none.
None. And so hearing no public comments from visitors, then approval of the August 16th, 2022 meeting minutes. So in your board packet, there's a copy of those minutes, and I trust that everybody has had a chance to read through those minutes. Are there any questions, comments? Oh, go ahead, Leonard.
I move they be approved as submitted.
So the motion has been made to approve the meeting minutes for August 16th, 2022 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
So it has been seconded by Caroline Bowdish. No further discussion. Hearing no further discussion, then we'll go ahead and vote on the approval. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Now we move to old business, and item A is the resolution approving the Pasco Public Facilities District bylaws. And Eric is not here today, so I understand, Dan, if you would introduce yourself, and then you're going to help us with this section.
Well, to the extent that I can, okay, to the extent that I can, I'm Dan Hyde. I'm of counsel with the Kerr-Ferguson Law Group, and if I can help you understand it, I understand that you've gone through this a bit. It is somewhat typical in terms of the types of things that are provided in the bylaws, defining your structure and defining your offices and duties and responsibilities. I don't know if there are questions or more that you might have questions about.
Board members, we had talked about this at our August 16th meeting, and we decided to take a month to review the information. Is any board member that has a question or comment or suggestion at this point? What's that?
I already talked to Debbie.
Go ahead, say it again.
I already talked to Debbie, so.
So you're good.
Yeah.
Spence?
I'm fine.
Marie?
No comments.
No comments? And Leonard?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, very good. And Dan, that was thorough and concise. Yeah. We'll mention to Eric how it went this meeting, so. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is there's a motion that I would like one of you to make after, and you'll notice in there it says approve resolution number 2022-4. So I am going to read that resolution so we know that it's included in the minutes exactly what this resolution 2022-04 is. A resolution of the Pasco Public Facilities District Board approving bylaws for defining its rules of procedure and governance of its activities as permitted through the Pasco Public Facilities District Charter. So after reading the resolution, then I would entertain a motion, and if you would please read the motion as it is written in our agenda packet. On our agenda, pardon me, under 8. Go ahead, Leonard. No, Caroline, you're gonna read it? Here. Yeah, I'm sorry, just a minute. So here's what I want you to do. I want you just to read this. Right there. Good.
Okay, I move that, to approve resolution number 2022-04, approving the Pasco Public Facilities District bylaws.
Is there a second?
Second.
So the resolution, the motion to approve, resolution 2022-4 has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Call for question.
Hearing none, then we'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And so no nays, so the motion carries. Thank you. Just a minute here. We're gonna do just a little housekeeping here, sorry. So you have to sign this. Okay, item B under old business, Public Facilities District Board appointments, and Matt?
Thank you, Mr. President, and also introduction. I'm your new staff member. I've met all of you individually and look forward to serving you as your dedicated staff member to the Public Facilities District. Submitted to the mayor and to the council were reappointments of Mr. Dietrich and Ms. Gillespie. The mayor approved last week, and my understanding is the council approved formally in action last night. So I believe all of your members are current and properly appointed.
All right, thank you. And Leonard and Marie, obviously it's great to have you back. Thank you for continuing your service. And Matt, welcome. Good to have you here. New business, A, records management, use of the Public Facilities District emails and public records requests. And Matt and Debbie, you're both going to talk to us about this, so go ahead.
I'll start off, and I want to thank you, members who wanted to try and use an email that's been available through the city's website to reset passwords and come down a little early. And staff have helped with that, and we'll get you some additional information. I wanted to share a couple of details because for a number of years I was a council member and mayor and made the transition from, in the old days you just used one email address, and I, with council in particular, learned that maybe separating email addresses on important things, it got to be more and more important as the state law changed. So I just wanted to share a couple of details. The option still remains with you how you would like to receive communications, whether they be email, texts, or that sort of thing. But as a practical matter, Washington State, particularly I believe 1971 initiative, really values openness of its publicly elected officials, and by extension, the PFD members being appointed by the city council. It's also a technological quagmire, or can be, because if you do an email, we'll assume that they're going to be viewable in a public setting. There are some narrow circumstances that are records may be excluded. But I just wanted to offer you and make sure you have the opportunity, if you want to use a PFD email address that is managed by the city, so all records are kept, that's available to you. That may make it so that your personal emails, because you probably all have that, are separate from that, so that's your option. Or if you want to use your personal email address, but know that it's subject to a public records request, and I think the attorney might have to, if need any augmentation on this point, if there's any public activity that does occurs on a personal email address, it gets a little bit difficult. So I would just caution, I know that I got asked for any and all emails I had ever sent related to public business when I had a personal email account as a mayor, and it was an arduous task to separate the two. And so I found doing a council address for council was much easier for a records management perspective. There's a lot of scenarios, I think, also that probably are going to be past the subject to today, but just wanted you to think about what you might want to do. The practical matter is this is a $40 million plus project that's going to have more public scrutiny. So there's probably going to be some more interest in records. And as I think the clerk can testify about some of the records requests that do come through and maybe a couple of examples. With that, I just wanted to kind of set the table on what the discussion might be about and go from there. And I see you've lit the attorney, when the attorney lights his light, maybe I defer to him.
Not intending to take this any longer than I need to, but let me throw a thought out to give you a perspective that may help make your decision on use of the city's email facilities. If you use your own private phone or computer and it involves public records, those facilities, those phones or computers can actually be subject to searching. Somebody could say, I want to see all of the records for such and such a topic, and if it's on your own personal computer, somebody could say, I want to see what's on that computer, and that may mean disclosing more than you would want to do so. I would encourage you to use the city's email facilities and equipment rather than your own personal equipment, because you don't need to make anything more public than you would want to do so, and you may not have a choice if you're using your own personal equipment.
Question on that, being you say, and the city's equipment, I have my stuff. And I would use the city's email address, but my equipment would become public property at that point in time. Is that what you said? So do I need to
I'm wondering whether it could be possible to have separate equipment. If you don't have separate equipment, then much of the cautionary things I said may not be there to help you. If you use your personal equipment for public communication or for public records purposes, that can be something that drags your piece of equipment or your phone into court. I'll give you an example, and I'm not trying to unduly scare you, but there was a case that came out of the city of Shoreline some years ago, where the mayor in Shoreline received some email sent to her home address. She wrote a copy of that, printed a copy of that email and gave it to the city manager, and then erased it from her computer. Then some other person made a public records request for the email asking for the metadata also. Now, I didn't even know what metadata was when that case came out, but that's some of the computer stuff that you don't see. And unfortunately for the city of Shoreline and the mayor, that was lost when the email was erased. And the city of Shoreline had to pay a good price for that loss. That's what I'm saying. If you use your own equipment, you use it subject to some constraints that may be asking a lot, and that's what I'm saying. You don't want to get rid of what you don't want to get rid of if it's city related.
So then, Dan, if I send a text to Matt and my text reads only, please call me, is that a problem for me?
This, matter of fact, maybe, I may not be the best one to tell you this, and matter of fact, the city clerk might be better at this, but you have retention schedules too. Something like please call me may be a very short retention schedule. After it's sent and it's responded to, there's nothing more to it. So you could probably get rid of those things, but Debbie may be a better...
That is correct for that retention of that particular
things
type.
that are longer, things that are more involved may have a greater retention requirement.
So talk a little bit then about this retention schedule, and I sent this text message to Matt asking him to please call me, and that's all it reads. Am I supposed to I mean, I delete my
Some,
text.
something like that. A please call me message is probably useless after it's received. And
After
so,
Matt gets it.
correct.
Right.
Okay.
And so it could be deleted pretty quickly. There are some things that may not be, please call me about this and this and this and this, and we talk about a variety of topics. Maybe the way I'm gonna say it is the more involved it is, the more likely it's gonna be a longer retention schedule. And Debbie probably has those retention schedules that are, I don't know if they're printed out, but you certainly have them available.
So, and I'm hoping also that once a person gets above 65, we have a different retention schedule also.
I'm not quite sure how to respond to that.
Yeah, and that's fine. Let the minutes reflect that. Okay, so thank you, Dan.
It sounds to me like the safest way to be is for me to not use my personal devices and to purchase a separate device that is used only for the public facility district.
If there's much use of that, that makes sense. If not, you just need to be careful about when you use it. I'm not trying to say you have to buy a new piece of equipment or a new computer, but if this group starts using electronic communication or receiving and transmitting public records a lot, it might make better sense to do that. But if it's just an occasional one, you could probably work with Debbie, I would assume.
The only thing that we receive currently is the agenda and the minutes of the past meeting via emails.
And if you don't respond or give your opinions about those, you don't reply, you'll probably be pretty safe to let that be the extent of it.
So going back to the text message, then if I just write, Matt, please call me, and that's it, period. And if I go past that and start then writing about, want to talk about next month's agenda, then that's going from a very brief retention to something different.
Correct.
Okay.
Let me also clarify or augment, hopefully from a technology perspective. What our IT person showed you was, and I'm not going to get the term exactly right, but call it a containerized email system, meaning that you're accessing it from city resources. You may access it on a personal device, but all of the data that is being shared is actually from a city resource exclusively, and all of the records would be requested from that source. So even if you by chance access that from your home computer or for a laptop or in a hotel somewhere, all of that data still resides on the city's server. And I would imagine, though, the claim then to have a personal device looked at is the risk is much smaller in that case.
I would agree with that. In fact, if you have I think we got off track a little bit when it sounded like there was a choice. The more you can stick to the city facilities, the better. The more you can stick to their email setup, the better, from public records standpoint.
So if we choose to go on the city's email device, then all communications in there will be kept within the city. It's even when you start having conversation back and forth, it's still kept within the city, and it does not open the door to my personal account.
I hope.
Okay? Well, that's a reasonable answer.
Well,
I understand.
Before the O'Neill versus Shoreline case, I wouldn't have expected the metadata to be something that hamstrings the governmental body.
As long as we're having a conversation on the city's email stable, we're generally okay.
I would agree, and I would also go a step further. In your case, Mr. Dietrich, you tend to be just receiving notifications about meetings. Doesn't put in a special incumbency on you to provide records that you've received those. That's going to be on the other end.
So I think I have one more question for you, Dan, and then I'm done. So the way it was explained to me one time is the attorney for the plaintiff doesn't want any empty chairs, and then it becomes the attorney for the defendant to get yourself out of the action. So is that the same kind of an approach with, we have our PFD email accounts, and then if there's something that we have on our phone, then they would want to take a look at both of them, and then we would have to get our phone removed
I'm not gonna,
in order to get that chair back to being empty.
yeah, I'm,
Because when you mentioned I hope, and I understand, how the legal system works, and that it's kind of unfortunate that hope has to be part of the discussion.
well, let me throw this out here. The state Supreme Court has just recently handed down a case that dealt with the public facility, or the recreational immunity statute. That's a statute that authorizes an immunity protection to property owners, public or private, when that property is used for recreational purposes, so long as certain things apply. They just recently decided that in a way that changed an earlier decision that they made that I thought, well, I was pretty comfortable with what it used to say. Now it's changed it a little bit so that you're not sure whether, for instance, how protective that same action is. I wish I could predict what would happen in the future, but what I'm going to say is you need to be aware that there is a risk whenever you do something that could trigger a public records request that we cannot satisfy. And again, some things have a very short retention schedule and you can move right on. Other things might have a longer one, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to be careful when you're dealing with those.
Okay, thank you. Matt, you have your light on, or is it Debbie's turn? It's Debbie's turn?
Yeah, maybe something that might help you is if you separate it, and if you aren't generating PFD documents, you're not creating work from your own personal, or even if you do on the occasion create something, a draft document from your own computer, clearly mark that as a draft and keep that separate. So if there was a public records request that came out, you can easily access that and provide it to us if it is on your personal computer. Otherwise, always provide it, email it to us so that we have it in our confines, in our system, or to me so I can put it in the Public Facilities District folder, the electronic folder, because we are trying to go to electronic. So, and if you have any questions about a particular document and the retention on it, I can help you with that. There are several different retention schedules. One in particular is for us, for the PFD, but as we get into construction, there'll be some additional things. So we're on that, and we want to keep you all together in the same. But tonight, our discussion really is about your electronic communications, which is your email communications to the city, or to your staff and back and forth. And we want to keep that in the confines with the city so we can search it easily for you so that you don't have to go through a lot of work. And that's why we're encouraging you to do a PFD city email address instead of having your own individuals. So.
And so, Debbie, it is an adjustment for us to call the former mayor staff.
I know. Me too.
So I have a question. As we go forward, we're going to be generating a lot more documents. And I'm sorry, Debbie, I missed a little bit of what you were saying earlier. But, I anticipate generating documents, having discussions, giving comments, things like that. So perhaps it would be advisable for us to obtain separate devices. Or is it still your recommendation that we can do all of that within the container of the PFD email?
Technologically speaking, I think what staff have provided a URL, a website address that does work within that, that's probably at this point a reasonable accommodation. If you as a group do want to pursue separate devices, I would suggest that if you do that, you're going to have to use those separate devices more consistently, and you'll have to carry around another iPad, frankly. So I would suggest thinking about that probably as a group. While we could probably tailor some things to individuals, it's probably, I would suggest it might be a discussion later on. I'm suggesting at this point, be aware, be cautious. You do have business to conduct and wholeheartedly do that business. But if you use the city resource and the URL provided for the email address, I think that it's a reasonable amount of resources for at this point. Does that help answer your question, Ms. Gillespie?
I'm a little sensitive because I know, working.
Can you turn your light on, ma'am?
I work in my day job as a federal contractor, right? And so it's very expressly stated that they can take your phone at any time and you lose control.
They take
right?
your personal phone?
Yes, if
Oh.
you choose to not carry two phones, one for work and one for personal. And, most people don't want to lug around two phones, so you just take that risk. So it sounds to me like this is the same thing.
Similar, and having worked at Hanford, I was also aware of making that time point in which you're on the clock until 4 o'clock or whatever that time is, and not doing PFD business during work hours. That might be an additional requirement for you working at Hanford. As a point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would never access the PFD website from the Hanford system.
I think with 5 different members, you're going to have 5 different stories.
Yeah.
In cases, and if we do want to do devices, I think that is an option. I would just take to say it would probably be a little bit of lead time to think it over, and if you as a group want to do that or individually, maybe let me know and we could investigate that.
Okay.
Just to kind of put a bow on the conversation here then, Dan, it sounds like this retention schedule, what becomes very important in terms of which device we use for PFD business. A please call me doesn't rise to the level of a problem, but a discussion about the meeting minutes with a text message is not the way to do it. Instead, use the PFD email account.
I would agree with that, especially if you're going to be attaching documents to that email. Once you attach a document, that's a separate additional thing that has to be accounted for.
Okay. Spence, any questions? Caroline, you're good?
Yeah, I have to change some of my ways here.
Oh my.
Mr. Morissette, and I would just note, thank you all for resetting your passwords. If you want to use the city's account, I also got some individual printouts from Terry. I'll give these out after the meeting so that you can get to that URL and to your account.
Yes, thank you.
And also, if you want to follow up, give me a call tomorrow or anytime later this week. We could probably talk about individual cases with any of the PFD members.
Okay, thank you. Dan, Matt, Debbie, thank you for that. That was very informative. Now we move to other business and project manager report. Matt, please go ahead.
I feel like I'm getting the mic tonight, but I'm going to try and be brief. But I also, again, thank you for bringing me along. I'm excited to be part of this group to help bring to fruition an aquatics facility for the Pasco voters. And one of the things that I've shared on your desk is very much a draft project timeline. I know that when I met with all of you, I thought that this would be an important thing to work on. And this again is me trying to imagine, could we open a facility, say by October 2024? And I worked from that date and worked backwards and tried to fill in a variety of details from a high level view. And I apologize, it's all in Excel and will end up, as we move forward, use a more professional piece of software. But this is intended just to visualize, if we are at September 2022, could we complete construction on an aquatics facility by September 2024? I've talked with a couple people, including Public Works staff, and it is potentially possible. I think there's a lot of things that would have to be done if we're all up for it. And this is meant to kind of elicit a conversation about whether or not what goal the PFD would like to set for doing such a project. That timeline is there are some details on there. Generally speaking, they kind of show the ideas at the beginning. It shows the vote that happened. You've brought in staff and some of the green items have been completed. We're in September. That shows that would need to engage a designer and do a design process in the earlier part of it. Then the second part of it is more, say, a year out from now is construction. Those are the two major parts. It also includes details of how we would do financing, what staffing we would use from a city perspective. I think we've talked about before is having city resources to help us out because their experience with the large projects would be helpful. Community outreach, I think, is an important element as well, and all of those details. This is meant as a draft, and to cut forward a little bit, I'm going to, I think, later in the conversation, make a discussion or a suggestion that maybe the October meeting might be one that we could be more of in a workshop mode, maybe sit around a table together as a group and go through this schedule or a version of this, and you as a group going through every point and becoming comfortable with it, modifying it as necessary, and adopting, say, a timeline as well as maybe a project goal list, any other artifacts that might want to be included as a game plan for how this group works for the next 2 years to build an aquatics facility.
I think that's a great
general
suggestion,
overview.
and I would like that. Does that mean, though, we probably better, so Debbie, for that October meeting, we would have pay bills and the workshop, and we could limit it to that? And tell Dave goodbye?
I think practically speaking, it would be a workshop plus a little bit of a business meeting, but you do the lion's share of it in a workshop discussion setting.
Okay, so the business meeting part you're talking, that would be the bills approval, the finance report, that, okay. I would very much like that. Leonard, do you have your light on?
If I do, that's my mistake.
Okay. Spence? Is that good?
Makes sense to me.
Marie?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's probably more than we can accomplish in an hour. So we need to plan some time for that.
Okay,
I know I have more than an hour's worth of stuff to talk about.
good. No, that's great.
Okay.
We look forward to hearing from you. And Caroline? That's okay. So, as long as we keep the business part brief and make the workshop as much as we can, then look forward to that.
In fact, Ms. Gillespie's point, my intention and hope, since that's been received favorably, was make it a 2 or 3 hour session as needed, and also maybe provide a sandwich for dinner and take a break in the middle of it.
I will stop by Albertsons and pick up 5 Lunchables.
I do not eat Lunchables.
So,
Okay, so then, I'm sorry.
and so if we do that, still do it as a 4 o'clock meeting, but expect it to go to 6 or maybe later, depending on how discussion goes for October's meeting.
Should we try to start a little earlier then, or is it still 4 o'clock is okay start time?
I could go earlier.
Marie? Or you'd have to check your calendar?
I'd have to check my calendar.
Okay, Spence?
I'd have to check and see if I'm booked.
And it doesn't have to be 3, I mean, it could be 3:30, 3:15, 3:45, it doesn't have to be on the hour.
We're talking October 25?
Yes,
Yep, I'm fine.
okay. Yes, great. And then maybe we can move it forward just a little bit. Just from a logistical standpoint and the public, if it's going to be a workshop meeting and you mentioned about sitting around a table, then the people watching on the public access channel, will they be able to still hear and see us, or how will that work?
I guess I haven't worked out that detail. I just am aware that sitting in a circle as you are, if we get a chance to maybe make it a little bit more direct, I'd like
Sure.
to do that. I'll work on that with staff.
Yeah,
if we
please,
can
I
do
just
that
want to make
arrangement.
sure we include those folks.
Yes.
So, okay, very good.
And this is also predicated, I'm hoping that taking the very first glance at that as a template for an agenda, even though it needs to be worked on, as a draft is one that we can work forward from.
Well, we have to start somewhere, and this is that introduction that we can then take to the next step, where we all get a chance to add to this. And you know, and I don't want to get into the discussion now, but, you know, what we're supposed to be getting accomplished in September, that we might be a little bit behind in some things, but we'll move that back to maybe October, November, and go from there.
I just have a couple more things to report. I did do a LifeQuest visit. I want to thank Mr. Fred Lamoth and his colleagues several weeks ago. Since I'd been traveling the world, I wasn't up on all of the details. And visiting their site, I got a better sense of how one might be able to do a public-private partnership, how one might be able to put a aquatics facility in the Road 68 area and those details. And so it was for my edification and wanted to let you all know that I had done that. That probably is a question that then comes up to the board later, the question about a public-private partnership. Didn't commit to anything, or but just was for my edification so that I might be able to help you if that question comes up. One other item, or several other items. Just at the very beginning of the meeting, you might have seen a picture of some kids on what essentially was a bouncy castle on the water. And they're called Wibbits, and that's a trade brand, sort of like Q-tip is to the ear cotton swab market. Wibbits are this brand of bouncy castles on the water. They're an amenity provided in a variety of other aquatics facilities. And I saw that the past couple weeks, and I just enjoyed it. And I thought I might share it with you if you hadn't seen them. And they're on the list that you've had before of items that are probably not super expensive, but are very popular with the public. It kind of matches that category.
So that's something that can fit into the wow that we're wanting to accomplish also.
Exactly. And I believe that there may be a facility located in Richland that has some Wibbit brand materials when I check their website. So they may already have some here locally. And I know that Snohomish Aquatics Facility has some. I think one or two of those pictures might have been from there.
So it's good that you introduce us to those terms like this Wibbit. If I have any trouble, I'll talk to my grandkids.
Exactly. Final thing I would just note is that tomorrow I'm attending the Association of Washington State Public Facilities Districts as a representative for you all in Tacoma for 2 days. And then also on the way, I'm stopping off at the Yakima YMCA and getting a tour of that facility by a gentleman that represents one of the people that do construction of aquatics facilities in the state. And that one's, since it's along the way, it's cheaper for you to have me drop off there and spend an hour looking at that. So that concludes, I believe, my report.
Very good. Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, if I might just mention, this has been probably 15 years ago. A party of the board at that time, and it was myself, Gary Crutchfield, I believe Bob Tippett, there may have been somebody else, met with Mr. Cadwell from LifeQuest at that time. And without spending a whole lot more time on it, I would be interested if there has been improvements to the access off of Road 68 and Burden, what improvements have been made that have changed it to be a more positive at this point in time. I know that we had spent a whole afternoon with Mr. Cadwell and had come to a conclusion that it, at that time, did not appear. Now, maybe there have been some positive changes with the traffic flow, I don't know. But I, for one, is not willing to spend a whole lot of time on something that we've already discussed years ago. And that's just my comment.
Mr. Dietrich, and I, if it would be okay, and if I'd like to answer your question and give my impression, but I also note that Mr. Lamoth is here and maybe give an opportunity to augment anything I might say, or if that's okay.
Oh, it's fine. I'm willing to listen to anything.
That said, visiting the site, I think there is a significant challenge for ingress and then also egress from a site. It is on a exit of Road 68. There is possibility of turning Convention Drive into an exit for that facility. I think the larger question is how that will benefit Pasco, and I'm wearing a little bit of my mayor experience hat because I know that we talked about that as a project. I don't think, though, that it lends itself easily to exiting and getting back on the freeway without going through the current configuration. I did think that you could fit an aquatics facility itself, probably just a facility on there, and I think it hinges largely on the point of a common shared parking lot. And then also what I did find very interesting, talking with Mr. Cadwell, was examples of public-private partnerships. There are a couple in the state, specifically I think Chehalis or Centralia has an operation, and then also I was aware that they shared with me that Bainbridge Island, a local government there, had purchased I'm going to call it a LifeQuest-like facility, and with plans to turn it into an aquatics facility. Don't know what that's going for, but I think Mr. Cadwell and the group did demonstrate potential of what a public-private partnership could be, and I think they maybe refined that a little bit, not knowing exactly what you talked about years ago. And hopefully I've summarized that in fair terms, and would ask if Mr. Lamoth has anything to augment on those points. And if you do, we'd need you up here at the microphone. Mr. Fred Lamoth. And if you press the little button so that the little light comes on.
Little button, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Dietrich, what I'd like to say in general that we have proposed a specific site plan. You have not seen it. Mr. Gillette has seen it. Matt's seen it. Mr. Zabel's seen it. Craig Maloney's seen it. And we gave a copy to Matt when we met with him. Also, we gave him a PowerPoint presentation. And all I'm hoping is that at some point in the future, when the group in your workshop and Craig suggests to us that you give us the opportunity to be here and share that information with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions? I don't want to get into any more particulars because I want to have Carl Cadwell and Bill Lamson here with me to get into those details.
All right, thanks, Fred. If that's the end of your presentation, you have to turn the light off.
Okay.
Good man. Okay. So next item under other business, City of Pasco update, Mr. Zabel.
Good afternoon, board members. Pitch hitting for Zach today. So first I want to congratulate board members Gillespie and Dietrich on your reappointment. Council and confirm council did approve that last night. So thank you for your willingness to continue to serve. We got a big project ahead. So a couple things I wanted to give you a quick update about is our interlocal agreement. Right now, staff's working with the attorney's office and evaluating some updates to better reflect what the relationship with the city and district are going to look like going forward. I mean, I think we've enjoyed a long relationship with a fairly low level amount of work. And you have a project now, so that's probably some very significant increases in activities anticipated. So we're going to probably get into a little bit more definition, like clerk's office and public records and meeting support, records management, maintenance and retention, things like that we talked a little bit about earlier tonight. Maybe formalizes a little bit our staff support from senior management side, and then get into a little bit more detail on finance. We talked a little bit about some of these departments working for the district. And, you're going to be having quarterly reports, and, you're actually going to get accounts payable, accounts receivable here pretty quick, as you start doing some things, even just purchasing communication devices, you're going to have bills you never had before very quickly. And then as you guys grow, someone working with the bond counsel and financing and our finance folks in terms of financing the construction of the facility, and potentially depending on how the board sees themselves fleshing out from a staff standpoint, even during operations. That might be something that you're going to rely on the city finance department to provide you. And then, of course, Public Works. Matter of fact, our interim manager here is housed in Public Works, so he's kind of getting to know that department pretty well. And you know, they'll be providing some services to you, like construction or consultant selection process and management, bidding, construction management, those type of things. And so we'll kind of lay that on the ILA as well, and try to address some of those things. So we're planning on bringing a draft back to the October board meeting. That may be something we just sit around and work around the table, not necessarily for action, just to have some discussion with the board, get some direction. Once the board's satisfied, we'll present that to city council for their review and formalize that agreement. Was there any questions on the ILA?
Yeah, I just think it's important, and I thank you for the presentation on that, that we understand our line towards the city and city staff as to what we can expect and what you expect of us. And so that it's a working relationship, and with our new staff person on, that is going to make that more cohesive. And I expect that the city has the professional staff that will deal with this project, which is going to be a large project. And I am anticipating the city to be a large part of that, and Matt to be the conduit between that, if that sounds reasonable.
Yes, that's kind of what we're envisioning.
So then, Dave, could there be a connection between this project timeline and perhaps at maybe even the next meeting, putting together a budget and connecting the budget to the timeline, so that the assumptions that go into the budget will make sense of when we can expect things to happen financially?
Yes, that actually is my next thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, is a bridge loan.
Good.
And, you know, again, and to your point, our plan would be to talk to you about this a little bit more detail in October, but right now you have revenues coming, but they're not going to get here till the end of the first quarter of 2023, as you're well aware. But you're going to have expenses that are already starting to incur. Matter of fact, we have the expense of the election to deal with itself. So we've talked a little bit about a loan previously, and in talking with our finance folks, our goal is to kind of cost out, and this is very helpful. Though the board hasn't necessarily approved it yet, but it kind of gives us something to work off of. We're going to cost out anticipated expenditures between now and the end of the first quarter, and we'll have a pretty good sense of what that loan amount would be. And once at that point in time, your expenses aren't necessarily going to be super high, and your revenues are going to be they're going to start at full throttle, right? So I don't think the loan is probably a fairly short-term loan. I don't think you'll take long to pay it back. And once your revenues start, then it's a matter of finance just managing, again, the services, the finance department just kind of managing those accounts for the district. And so to answer your question, we will use this draft to kind of parse out some of those anticipated costs for the next 6 months or so.
Yes, thank you, because actually this timeline starts really back in February with the election.
Right.
And so connecting all that it'd be helpful. So thank you.
Okay. And that's all I had for this year. I just wanted to give you a little bit update on those two things and let you know we have a couple meaty things coming to your next meeting.
Great. Look forward to it. And we'll make your last meeting a busy
fun one.
meeting. Yes. Any questions for Mr. Zabel? If not, then we can go ahead. Just let me get this out of the way. We can adjourn the meeting, but before we do that, then I think, Leonard, you mentioned October 25th would be our next meeting?
That's what my calendar says.
Does that sound about right, Debbie? So October the 25th here at the council chambers, and then the time will be decided. Does that sound?
I guess I would just ask, what time would you all like to meet? Is 3 o'clock too early?
It'll work for me, but
3:30?
yeah, if 3:30 is better, 3:30.
So like 3:30 on the October 25th.
Okay. You're fine, Marie? Spence? Okay, so why don't we, unless something really crops up, then let's just plan on 3:30 on October the 25th. Okay? Thank you much. And is there any other business to come before the September meeting? If not, I will go ahead and adjourn and see everybody on October 25th.